changes taking place on and within the earth on account of internal and external processes which operate continuously in the form of an endless cycle. The internal forces are known as endogenic forces. The external forces at work on the surface are called exogenic forces. These forces act on the surface of the earth and are both erosional and depositional in nature. Disintegrated rock material is generated from solid rocks through the process of weathering. Thus, weathering refers to all processes that break rocks into smaller particles. Weathering can be observed anywhere, anytime. In this chapter, we will study the following concepts: endogenic forces, exogenic forces, agents of denudation. Endogenic forces. There was only one continent, called Pangaea. The present 7 continents emerged when this single land mass split up. As a result, the oceans also got divided into 5 water bodies. The 7 continents in order of size are Asia, Africa, North America, South America, Europe, Australia, Antarctica. The oceans are the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Ocean, the Arctic Ocean, the Southern Ocean.
Plate tectonics. The lithosphere is broken into 6 large and several small blocks called plates. These plates move very slowly, just a few millimeters each year in different directions. The movement of these plates have been broadly classified into 3 categories: convergence, divergence, and conservative movement. These forces give rise to several processes of formation of landforms, which are best summed up under 2 main categories: endogenic and exogenic processes.
Volcanoes. The molten rock material of the earth beneath the lithosphere on which the tectonic plates float is extremely hot. This heat rises in the form of currents. Volcanic eruptions take place both on the sea floor as well as land. Some of the islands belonging to the Andaman and Nicobar Island groups of India are peaks of volcanic mountains resting on the seabed. Mountain Fujiyama in Japan is a good example of a volcanic mountain on the surface of the land.
Earthquakes. The plates of the Earth's crust are in continuous motion, and the movement of these lithospheric plates produce earthquakes. The sudden shaking of the Earth's crust takes place on account of release of energy. Such occurrence of shock waves or seismic waves is called an earthquake. The point inside the Earth where the earthquake originates is called the focus, and the place directly above the focus on the Earth's surface is called the epicenter. The scale that measures the magnitude or intensity of the earthquake is called the Richter scale. The earthquakes are measured from 0 to 9 on it. Tsunami. Tsunami is a Japanese word meaning destructive tidal wave, but actually it is a seismic sea wave caused by an earthquake occurring on the ocean floor. It can also be triggered by volcanic eruptions. It causes a wave-like displacement of ocean water and causes great loss to life and property on the shore on account of the back action of the water which flows back to the ocean. Distribution. Earthquakes and volcanoes are distributed all over the world, especially on the coastline, on the tectonic boundaries. Volcanoes, the Pacific Ring of Fire, around the Pacific Ocean, across the North and South Atlantic Ocean. Earthquakes, around Pacific Ocean, along the Indo-Australian Plate boundary, eastern side of Eurasian Plate, western side of North American Plate.
Changes taking place on and within the Earth on account of internal and external processes which operate continuously in the form of an endless cycle. The internal forces are known as endogenic forces. The external forces at work on the surface are called exogenic forces. These forces act on the surface of the Earth and are both erosional and depositional in nature. Disintegrated rock material is generated from solid rocks through the process of weathering. Thus, weathering refers to all processes that break rocks into smaller particles. Weathering can be observed anywhere, anytime. In this chapter, we will study the following concepts: endogenic forces, exogenic forces, agents of denudation. Exogenic forces. These forces act on the surface of the Earth and are both erosional and depositional in nature. Disintegrated rock material is generated from solid rocks through the process of weathering. Thus, weathering refers to all processes that break rocks into smaller particles. When the disintegrated rock debris is carried from one place to another place by winds, running water, or glaciers, it is called erosion. Rate of weathering and erosion. The factors responsible for weathering and erosion work at different speeds. The factors influencing weathering are change in land use, type of soil, slope of land. Exogenic forces. Action of rivers. The place from where a river originates is called its source. Most rivers have their sources in hilly areas from where water rushes down with great force, carrying the disintegrated rock material with it. Depending on the velocity of water, the volume of water, nature of rocks, and the load of rock debris, called sediments, that a river carries, it performs the actions of transportation, erosion, and deposition. In the middle course, the velocity of water is less. The river can no longer transport its load. The silt begins to settle to the river bed or is deposited on the river banks. Meanders, large bends and loops, oxbow lakes, cut-off loops forming lakes, and alluvial cones, cone-shaped deposits, are formed in this part of the river. In the middle course, many streams join the main river and increase its volume of water. The small rivers which join the main river are called its tributaries.
Old stage. It is the lower course of the river. The flow of water is sluggish or slow as it approaches the sea. The river seems to break up into a number of streamlets called distributaries. Due to sluggish flow, sediments get deposited at the mouth of the river and create a triangular piece of land called delta.
Changes taking place on and within the Earth on account of internal and external processes which operate continuously in the form of an endless cycle. The internal forces are known as endogenic forces. The external forces at work on the surface are called exogenic forces. These forces act on the surface of the earth and are both erosional and depositional in nature. Disintegrated rock material is generated from solid rocks through the process of weathering. Thus, weathering refers to all processes that break rocks into smaller particles. Weathering can be observed anywhere, anytime. In this chapter, we will study the following concepts: endogenic forces, exogenic forces, agents of denudation. Glaciers. Glaciers are formed in cold areas where there is heavy snowfall in winter. Glaciers are today found in the high mountain peaks of the Himalayas as well as in high latitude areas like Antarctica. There are two types of glaciers: mountain glaciers and continental glaciers. When they melt, sand and silt gets deposited and landforms like glacial moraines are formed. Waves. Waves are ripples in ocean water. They also carry sediments when they pound the sea coasts. These sediments become the agents of erosion when the waves pound the rocks on the sea coasts. Through erosion, rocks are hollowed out and form sea caves. Over time, the cavities become bigger and form sea arches. When the rooftop breaks and collapses, the walls still stand. These features are called stacks. A steep, rocky coastal formation rising vertically above seawater is called a sea cliff.
Work of groundwater. The water that seeps underground is the most powerful source of erosion and deposition. The power of groundwater can be seen in such landforms as caverns, which are made by erosion of underground rock. Narrow passages that link bigger caverns are called potholes. If the water is slightly acidic or it seeps underground through limestone region, it dissolves the rock, which when exposed to air makes stalactites and stalagmites. The underground water flows like rivers through a passage until it either merges with oceans or emerges on the ground. It is how wells and springs are also formed. Work of wind. The most important agent of erosion in desert and sea coast as well as in arid region is moving wind. Winds become active agent when the particles are carried by them. The most active landform of grinding action of wind is the mushroom rock seen on sea coasts as well as in the desert regions. When the wind faces obstacles like hillocks, rocks or any raised ground, they deposit their load and result in building structures like sand dunes. When sand is deposited in large areas, a plain so covered with sand is called loess plain.